Today I'm drawing Gon Freecss from Hunter x Hunter. Um, Real quick, I do want to say that if you have seen this show, feel free to tell me about it in the comments. Also, if I'm not gonna talk about lore much at all, or I'm not gonna try and say what I know about the lore. I might talk. I'll talk about like what I think the lore is, right, or the type of archetype of show that it is. I don't know Gon's archetype at all because I haven't watched enough to see his personality. I watched like halfway through, not exactly halfway, but I remember not finishing the first episode of both the older version of the show and the newer version. And it's not that I didn't like it. What happens is there's other shows that I was more in. Like there was phases where when I had more time to watch anime in my life, um, not saying that I couldn't do that now, but I'd have to figure out how to make time for that now. Like, but when I did have time for that, um, I would watch shows I'm very engaged with that I like a lot, or something about the story was intriguing to me for me to want to continue to watch more, and or I liked the vibes about it, or whatever. There's something I liked enough about it that what happened was, see, I understand that there's shows that, for example, there's very slow pacing, especially a lot of these very longer animes that have like over hundreds of episodes, like One Piece, Naruto, um, Hunter x Hunter. There's a lot of animes that were made quite a while ago that have just tons of episodes, and things can be paced a certain way just because the show is very long. So what happens is I'm sitting through the I so here's the thing. I remember sitting through the first episodes and seeing that the right off the bat, the archetype of the type of show that it is that there's it's one of those shows where there's a whole type of system where there's people who hunt monsters or beings or whatever, right? Like that's a thing. And but normal people can't just do that. They have to train to do it. In a lot of these shows, the way it works, people either have to train to be able to do that and train to the level of, past beating a human, but to the realm of being able to be a type of person who can hunt, or protect. So whether it's that they're protecting their city or their location or whatever from certain things, or whether it's to go and hunt those things so that those things don't go and cause problems or whatever. And it's not just like hunting animals; it's like hunting monsters, right? So what? And maybe there's prizes for that. Maybe there's like systems where people level up or their abilities increase, or it's like a profession. So like a very viral anime like solo leveling. That was a very, I can't tell you how many manhwas I've seen on YouTube that actually had something to do with that type of concept. And I know that wasn't the first show to have that. There's been many shows that have some type of concept like that. But the whole thing where, let's say there's a normal world and one day a portal opens up and monsters come through, and somehow a bunch of people within the human population get endowed with magical abilities on certain levels. So in solo leveling, what happens is a threat appears, and then on Earth that is not from Earth, and then people on Earth gain inherent abilities to be able to oppose this threat and protect Earth, right? So what happens is there's people who they don't go work a job anymore. They actually will go and hunt, or defend, or go into these portals and defeat the things before those things would come to the real world or whatever. And they do that and they would make money for that. So that would become their profession, right? Or a very common thing in anime, I was watching videos about, I watched part of videos about this, so I didn't actually hear what some of these people explanation was, but they talk about how um in anime, that what one thing they got correct, quote unquote, is that they make being a superhero a profession. So just like police officers could be a profession. Like police officers got to see and handle or deal with anything that goes on in the location that they're supposed to cover. Or the army is kind of like a higher grade level of that, so they could be stationed anywhere on Earth, and they gotta hold down the base that they're stationed at, literally. So they gotta do whatever they gotta do at that base, and then they also, if that base got invaded, they have to pick up a gun or a weapon and defend the base from whoever is doing it, right? So, but anime also says superheroes are it's a profession. So some of these animes, people would gain abilities through whatever means, or some of these people will be sent to another world as an isekai character and then start a new life there, and it could be that type of thing going on where it's their profession to go and hunt monsters or defeat monsters or protect people, or like I would say, like in the prior video, they could get hired as a mercenary. Literally, that's kind of like probably the better way to put it. It's a mercenary to go fight monsters, right? Or and then what happens is each show has its own coding of like how characters grow and develop to be able to face larger threats or different types of threats, and maybe there's a plot line, maybe there's corrupt humans, maybe there's good monsters. There's all types of twists and turns in these shows, right? Now what happens is I'm aware that Hunter x Hunter is one of those animes, and I could tell just from seeing some of the first episodes and seeing like the kid talk about how he wants to be a hunter and how his parents didn't want him to be or whatever. But he aspires to be one, and aspiring to be one in a lot of these animes is something that, you know, a parent wouldn't want their kid to have to go through, because that's like a kid wanting to join the army and fight on the front lines, and a parent supporting that. I'm sure there's parents who could say something like, well, you know what, I'm gonna support my kid whatever they want to do, even if I don't like the fact that there's risks. Like I'm gonna still, you know, I'm gonna at least be positive. Like I can understand a parent saying that, but like if you know a parent knowing that even a person's being a police officer, they probably don't want that person to be out on the streets. They probably want their kid doing office work, because what happens is you do a job and you're given a gun because you might have to face people with guns, and you have to just go out in public and appear anywhere and handle anything that can happen at any given moment. Like what happens is like that person's like there's a reason that like if you've ever worked as a security guard, you get paid a certain amount that's higher than, you know, it's higher than any minimum wage job or whatever. You get paid a good amount of money to, if you're going to be security for a place, like actual, that's the position you sign up for, you make a good amount of money because you got to handle anything, or you have to be the first person to either see something or be in the vicinity to have to deal with it and call for backup. So it's like you're a frontline soldier for anything that can happen. At least you're not in a war zone, but if anything happens, any type of armed robbery, any type of level of violence, bullets flying anywhere, weapons, like you're literally have to be there first, and you have to call for backup, unless you could do it yourself, whatever, right? But you're probably supposed to call for backup. It depends on, you know, whoever is assigning you what the rules they tell you is, but like they pay you a lot because like your life is on the line for that automatically, depending on what level you can protect yourself. But you know, whether you stay alive or not, there's, you know, risk to your health or whatever, right? And then if you're paid for armed security, which means that they give you a gun and train you to use it, and you have to have a license to use it, you get paid like double that of what the for example, if you get paid 30 an hour for just regular security, if you get stationed somewhere for armed security, you're getting 60 an hour. But it's because like every day something can happen and you could get shot dead or whatever. So they're paying you more for showing up every day, to, you know, signing up to be in potentially a gunfire duel that can end your life every single day, right? You know, hopefully wouldn't wish that upon anybody, but that's just the nature of work and how people understand that they need to pay people for the level of risk they're gonna take. Even we're not talking about fighting the level. If the level of risk is higher, the level of pay is also higher. Um, so that's just a thing, right? So I'm aware that's what this show is about, but I don't know the characters. Now, if anybody knows about the lore, please feel free to tell me or correct me. If I got my read on what the lore probably is incorrectly. I just hear that the name of the show is Hunter X Hunter, and I seen in like the first episode, didn't even finish the first episode of the uh newer and the prior series, and just heard it was kind of like the same type of art archetype of show where there's a kid aspiring to become a hunter, which is something that is dangerous, but there's probably some type of a reward that comes with it, right? So basically, so I'm drawing Gon Freecss from Hunter x Hunter. I begin by establishing the overall pose and movement. Pose, because movement is one of the most important parts of the drawing, aka his dynamic pose. Next, I build the body structure and check the proportions. Once the anatomy is in place, I move the clothing and facial features. After that, I draw Gon's iconic hair and start refining the details throughout the sketch. As I strengthen the line work, the character starts becoming more recognizable. This drawing is great practice for anatomy, perspective, and dynamic posing. It's kind of funny. He's like in a battle pose, but not like a. I'm just kind of being funny right now. What would you call that? Would you call that like a neutral pose? Like, it's not like, for example, when people fight, they don't have to. Let's say somebody is going to be in a fight, right? They're not always going to be in like, stereotypical boxing high guard, or maybe a mid guard, or they have your hands up. But if you see the hands low like that, maybe that's their archetype. But what happens is, what I'm guessing his stance is, he's in like a neutral stance where he's ready to move, like move footwise. But if his hands are a little bit higher, he's ready to throw some punches and kicks, right? Basically, quote unquote, right? If that was even a thing, I don't even remember seeing combat in the system. I think I saw somebody try to take out some giant monster in the first episode, that I was referring to, right? But yeah, so that's kind of like what the stance is. So because it's not like an upright standing straight up stance, and it's kind of, he's in a dynamic position ready to move back and forth, or leap around, or run. I tried to capture that dynamic vibe with how he's, I guess, kind of resting his weight on his limbs and how he's positioning his limbs, right? So yeah, basically, all right. So as I strengthen the line work, the character starts becoming more recognizable. The drawing was great practice for anatomy, perspective, and dynamic posing. But yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.